The 1990s promised color, chaos, and imagination. Saturday mornings were sacred, yet, hidden in the flicker of CRT screens, there were shows too daring, too raw, or too misunderstood to last. They vanished, erased by controversy, replaced by silence. But their shadows linger. These are the stories of 15 banned animated shows you almost forgot existed. Until now. 1. Tiny Toon Adventures, Elephant Issues, 1991. A cartoon city at dusk. 3 young Toons stumble into trouble, giggling with soda cans that look suspiciously grown up. But soon the laughter turns to terror as headlights flash. A screech fills the night, and innocence collapses under the weight of consequence. Buster, Babs, and Plucky were the darlings of their age, tiny reflections of the great Warner Brothers icons. They carried mischief and wit in equal measure. But in the episode Elephant Issues, the writers dared to show them not as untouchable clowns, but as children flirting with adult vices. They drank, they drove, they crashed. The message was clear: don't drink, don't follow the crowd. But television censors saw only darkness. Parents complained. The story, though, meant as a cautionary tale, was banished. For years, this episode existed only in whispers, circulating among collectors like a forbidden reel. In retrospect, Elephant Issues feels oddly prophetic. It showed that cartoons could handle responsibility, that even laughter had a price. Yet the networks decided otherwise, hiding it away from the very children it hoped to protect. Today, its absence is louder than its warning ever was. 2. Darkwing Duck, Hot Spells, 1992. Flames lick the sky as a caped shadow battles something far older, far darker than the usual rogues of St. Canard. A figure with horns, fire, whispers of Beelzebub himself. Gosselin wanted magic, a taste of forbidden knowledge. Her heart was curious, innocent. But curiosity drew her toward forces too great to control. Darkwing, ever the bumbling hero, faced not a mad scientist or mutant plant, but a symbolic devil. For Disney, it was too much. Hot Spells aired once, then disappeared. Letters from concerned families poured in. Religious groups demanded its removal. Disney, protective of its squeaky clean empire, sealed the episode in a vault where it remains decades later. What makes it powerful is not the villain, but the moral, temptation, courage, and the pull between innocence and corruption. It dared to show children the battle between light and shadow, not as fairy tale metaphor, but in its rawest form. In a landscape of safe adventures and sanitized morals, Hot Spells burned too bright. Its banishment became its legend, turning one episode into a whispered ghost of what animation could risk and lose. 3. Dexter's Laboratory, Rude Removal, 1998. A lab filled with sparks and smoke. Dexter, boy genius, builds a machine to extract rudeness, but something goes wrong. Outcome: doppelgangers, Dexter and Dee Dee, foul-mouthed and untamed. Cartoon Network had always flirted with edge, but this was different. The episode brimmed with bleeped-out profanity, gestures that skirted the boundaries of family television. It was comedy laced with rebellion, too sharp for its time. Dexter was supposed to embody brilliance wrapped in arrogance, the child genius both admirable and flawed. But in Rude Removal, his dark mirror revealed a truth parents feared. What if kids imitated the rude, not the genius? Executives panicked. The episode never aired. For years, fans debated whether it truly existed. It circulated as legend until Adult Swim unearthed it online in the 2010s, finally confirming the whispers. By then, its bite felt almost quaint compared to modern irreverence. But in 1998, it was dynamite too dangerous to light. Rude Removal survives as a relic of risk. A reminder that even in a decade of bold experimentation, some boundaries were still sacred, and crossing them carried exile. 4. The Ren and Stimpy Show, Man's Best Friend, 1992. A living room in grotesque technicolor. Ren's eyes twitch. Stimpy smiles nervously. Across from them, George Liquor, a broad caricature of American machismo, waves a paddle. The scene spirals into one of the most violent confrontations in children's animation. Ren and Stimpy was never truly for children. Its humor was surreal, vulgar, and unsettling, but hidden in slapstick tones. Yet, Man's Best Friend crossed the line. Ren's beating of George Liquor was brutal, bloodied, unrelenting. Nickelodeon refused to air it. The creator, John Kricfalusi, clashed with the network. Soon after, he was gone. For fans, the episode became myth, passed in fragments, fueling the show's underground reputation. In truth, it was a satire of discipline, of authoritarian power, and the absurdity of dominance. But to executives, it was unacceptable. Man's Best Friend marked a turning point. It showed that the series' chaos wasn't an accident, but a conscious push toward the grotesque. By silencing it, Nickelodeon set the boundaries of children's programming, yet the episode's reputation only grew, cementing Ren and Stimpy as both genius and menace. 5. Cow and Chicken, Buffalo Gals, 1998. The sound of roaring motorcycles. A cloud of dust as leather-clad women burst into a suburban living room, gnawing on furniture with almost animalistic glee. To a child, it looked like absurd comedy. To adults, the subtext was impossible to miss. Cow and Chicken was always surreal, a fever dream of talking livestock and slapstick absurdities. But the episode Buffalo Gals tapped into stereotypes no network wanted broadcast. The Gals were clearly coded as a lesbian biker gang, their hobbies including wood chewing and home invasions. It was meant to be silly, yet in the late 90s, as television walked on eggshells around representation, it became scandal. Cartoon Network pulled it almost immediately, scrubbing it from reruns and later releases. For years, fans could only whisper about the episode, replaying the half-remembered images like forbidden folklore. To some, it was offensive caricature. To others, it was a rare glimpse of queer coding in a medium that otherwise erased it. The episode became a paradox, banned for perpetuating stereotypes, but also remembered as one of the first times queerness, however clumsy, entered a mainstream cartoon. Its erasure leaves us asking, what do we lose when uncomfortable reflections are buried? Perhaps Buffalo Gals matters less as a joke, and more as a record of what TV once dared, and then quickly disowned. 6. Beavis and Butt-head, Fire Episodes, 1993 to 94. A couch, two slackers. The flicker of a lighter in the night. For Beavis and Butt-head, fire wasn't just a word. It was a fixation, a joke that became a catchphrase, shouted gleefully by teenagers across America, until real flames spread. In the early 90s, tragedy struck when a young boy, allegedly imitating Beavis's pyromania, set fire to his family's trailer. The press erupted. Politicians pointed fingers. Parents demanded blood. MTV, suddenly cornered, responded swiftly. Episodes mentioning fire were pulled, censored, or shelved entirely. Beavis was forbidden from uttering his infamous "fire, fire" cry. The censorship reshaped the series. Its raw chaos was neutered, its edges dulled. Yet the controversy only amplified its cult aura. Fans whispered about the lost episodes, hunting for uncut recordings, taped off late-night airings. Beavis's obsession with fire became more than a gag. It became a symbol of dangerous media influence, debated in Congress, feared by parents, and mythologized by viewers. Looking back, it reveals the power of cartoons in shaping behavior, or at least the fear they might. In reality, fire had always burned in the human imagination, but for a brief moment, two idiots on a couch carried the blame, and their jokes went up in smoke. 7. SWAT Kats, The Radical Squadron, 1993 to 1995. A city skyline at midnight. Jet engines roar. Two masked vigilantes streak across the sky in a fighter jet designed for war. SWAT Kats was adrenaline in animated form. Sharp lines, dark tones, action that felt almost cinematic. It was unlike anything Hanna-Barbera had ever made, and that was its undoing. Ted Turner himself reportedly loathed the show. Too violent, he said, dismissing it as inappropriate for young audiences. Despite strong ratings and passionate fans, production slowed. Planned storylines were abandoned. A third season in development was abruptly canceled. The heroes of Mega Cat City were grounded not by their enemies, but by executives wary of blood and bullets. The irony? SWAT Kats was never gratuitous. Its violence had weight, consequence. Unlike slapstick pratfalls of the era, it carried tension, fear, even tragedy. It treated its young viewers as capable of understanding stakes, but in a world still haunted by debates over children and television, it was labeled dangerous. Today, SWAT Kats is remembered as both masterpiece and martyr, a bold step toward maturity in animation, clipped before it could fully spread its wings. Its legacy lingers in fan campaigns, rewatch communities, and a quiet recognition that sometimes the most daring visions burn out fastest. 8. Rocko's Modern Life, Leapfrogs and Others, 1993 to 1996. A frog reclines in a bathrobe, lips curled in a suggestive smile. She invites Rocko inside, her voice dripping with innuendo. For a Nickelodeon cartoon, it was scandalously adult. Rocko's Modern Life was surreal and satirical, often sneaking jokes past censors, but episodes like Leapfrogs drew too close to the edge. The story of Mrs. Bighead seducing Rocko raised eyebrows immediately. Other episodes toyed with cross-dressing, phone sex, and consumerist critiques. For adults, it was biting social commentary. For children, it was confusion. For Nickelodeon, it was trouble. Several episodes were pulled or edited, their most provocative gags excised from reruns. Even DVD releases years later carried sanitized versions. Yet the bans only magnified Rocko's reputation. It became known as the cartoon that wasn't afraid of sexuality, absurdity, or critique. The brilliance of Rocko lay in its honesty. It showed suburbia not as a happy pastel paradise, but as a messy, contradictory landscape. The bans remind us how fragile truth can be when hidden in comedy. What survives is not just a show, but a secret handshake among those who saw what Nickelodeon tried to hide. 9. Gargoyles, Deadly Force, 1994. A mansion at night. A gun is fired. Broadway, the gentle giant of the Gargoyle clan, picks up a pistol in jest. Moments later, his friend Elisa lies bleeding on the floor. Gargoyles was Disney's boldest experiment, gothic, tragic, rooted in myth. But the episode Deadly Force touched a nerve few expected. Gun violence wasn't abstract here. It was personal, intimate, horrifying. Parents and advocacy groups recoiled. The episode was pulled from rotation, later reinstated only with heavy disclaimers. Yet, for many, it was the show's most important story. It didn't glamorize violence. It condemned it, showing the consequences with raw clarity. Broadway's guilt, Elisa's pain, the gravity of a single careless moment, it lingered long after the credits. Disney's decision to bury it highlights the paradox of censorship. In shielding children, they denied them a lesson about responsibility and consequence that animation rarely dared to offer. Today, Deadly Force remains both controversial and courageous. Proof that cartoons, even under Disney's banner, could pierce the heart with truths sharper than stone claws. 10. The Simpsons, The City of New York versus Homer. Simpson, 1997, pulled after 9/11. A yellow family at the edge of chaos. Homer stands in front of a World Trade Center, one tower looming in the background as he fumes about a parking ticket. At the time, it was comedy. Years later, it became unwatchable. The Simpsons had already broken barriers, blending satire with slapstick, absurdity with heartbreak. But the episode The City of New York versus Homer Simpson, with its focus on the Twin Towers, was pulled from syndication after September 11th, 2001. Suddenly, jokes about bathroom lines and skyscrapers felt unbearable. The backdrop was no longer innocent, but a scar etched into collective memory. For years, the episode vanished from American television. It lived only in bootlegs, DVDs, and whispers of the banned Simpsons episode. Its disappearance wasn't about controversy, but trauma. The network's new audiences weren't ready to laugh at something tied so closely to loss. When it returned years later, it felt changed. What was once a story about Homer's stubbornness had become a time capsule of a world that no longer existed. It remains a reminder that sometimes bans are less about offense and more about grief, a nation too wounded to face its past. 11th Pokémon, Electric Soldier Porygon, 1997. A digital battlefield. Pikachu unleashes a lightning strike, and the screen flashes red and blue in rapid succession. Children watching across Japan collapse with seizures. Ambulances rush through the night. The Pokémon phenomenon was unstoppable in the late 90s. Cards, toys, and episodes flooding every corner of childhood. But Electric Soldier Porygon changed everything. Broadcast once in Japan, it caused hundreds of children to experience seizures triggered by the strobe-like animation. Panic spread. The episode was banned worldwide, never dubbed, never aired again. Porygon, the digital Pokémon at the heart of the story, was quietly buried by the franchise. Despite being blameless in the plot, its name became taboo. To this day, Porygon has never starred in another episode. It was collateral damage in one of the strangest controversies in television history. The episode remains a legend, more infamous than anything else in Pokémon's vast legacy. It reminds us how fragile the bond between art and audience can be. One moment of creative risk, an animation choice, turned into a national health crisis. And so, the episode vanished, leaving only ghostly echoes in the minds of those who saw it. 12. Batman, the animated series, Holiday Nights and Other Altered Episodes, 1992 to 95. Snow falls across Gotham. Batman stands silhouetted against a decorated city, while villains plan their crimes beneath the glow of Christmas lights. Yet, behind the darkness and drama, unseen hands were cutting, splicing, erasing. Batman. The animated series was hailed as a masterpiece, moody, mature, cinematic. But for all its acclaim, many episodes were censored or altered, especially those dealing with guns, drugs, and death. Holiday Nights, with its implied sexuality and mature tone, was heavily trimmed for television. Elsewhere, episodes that dared to show blood or direct violence were softened. Some disappeared entirely in syndication. The irony is that Batman thrived on its darkness. It wasn't meant to be a carefree romp. It was tragedy. Gothic noir painted in animation. Censorship stripped away the weight, sanding down edges that made it unforgettable. Even in altered form, the series changed television, proving cartoons could stand shoulder to shoulder with live-action dramas. But the lost cuts, the moments executives deemed too much, haunt its legacy. Batman was always about shadows, and these missing frames are shadows we may never fully see again. 13. Animaniacs, Potty Emergency and Other Pulled Segments, 1993 to 98. Yakko, Wacko, and Dot burst from the water tower, irreverent and anarchic. They sang songs about nations, poked fun at Hollywood, and pushed every boundary they could find. But even their zany energy had limits. The short potty emergency was one of several Animaniacs skits that teetered on taboo. Wacko's frantic search for a bathroom turned into a symphony of desperation. Funny for kids, but layered with innuendo adults couldn't miss. Censors worried it was too vulgar, too suggestive. It joined a small collection of sketches quietly retired from reruns. Other segments were edited for language, risque humor, or references deemed inappropriate for young audiences. Yet, fans adored the show's boldness, the way it refused to play safe, weaving slapstick with sly adult winks. Animaniacs was chaos wrapped in song, brilliant because it danced on the edge. The bands did little to dim its legacy. Instead, they fueled its reputation as a show smarter than it pretended to be, one that hid commentary inside cartoons. Even in silence, Potty Emergency and its vanished companions remain proof that sometimes silliness is more subversive than seriousness. 14. The Cramp Twins, 1999. Two brothers in constant conflict. Wayne, grimy and cruel. Lucian, refined but odd. Their world was grotesque, painted in sickly greens and distorted shapes. This wasn't the cheerful suburban childhood audiences expected. It was a parody of dysfunction. Premiering at the tail end of the 90s, the Cramp Twins immediately stirred controversy. Its humor was cynical, its art deliberately ugly, It's stories about cruelty rather than kindness. Parents complained it was too disturbing for children. Networks pulled episodes, shifting it to odd time slots before eventually canceling its American run. Yet in Europe, the show thrived, embraced as biting satire rather than children's fluff. Its ban in the US revealed how cultural boundaries shape censorship. What one nation rejected as toxic, another celebrated as bold. Today, the Cramp Twins is rarely mentioned in nostalgic retrospectives. But for those who saw it, the grotesque animation was unforgettable. It dared to say childhood wasn't perfect. It was messy, mean, and strange. And perhaps that honesty was exactly why it vanished. 15. Ren and Stimpy, adult party cartoon. Revival, 1999 pilot, shelved. A smoky apartment, Ren twitching with rage, Stimpy wide-eyed with devotion. Their world, already grotesque in the 90s, descends into outright obscenity. Nickelodeon had long since parted ways with John Crick-Falusi, the show's creator. But by the late 90s, he returned with a revival pitched not for children, but for adults, Ren and Stimpy, adult party cartoon. Its humor was explicit, violent, sexual. Networks panicked. The pilot aired in test screenings but was quickly shelved, episodes pulled before they even reached viewers. For fans, it became the final forbidden chapter, a reminder of how far Ren and Stimpy had always wanted to go, and how far Nickelodeon had held it back. The banned revival never found a home, and for good reason. It wasn't the strange genius of the original, but something harsher, crueler, stripped of charm. Its disappearance is almost merciful. Yet its existence proves a truth about censorship. Sometimes what vanishes isn't treasure, but excess. And still, like every ghost on this list, it lingers, not seen, but remembered. The 90s gave us color, chaos, and courage. Some shows shone too brightly, others stumbled into darkness. All of them, banned or buried, remind us that animation is never just for kids. Subscribe, like, and join us. Because the lost reels of television are waiting to be rediscovered.